to go. Hey, you can call your next witness.
Susan Johnson.
Ms. Johnson, good morning to you, or good afternoon to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
The clerk will swear you in.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, ma'am, you can walk over here to your right.
Thank you.
Just watch your step as you come forward. If you need a glass of water, let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate you.
Thank you, sir.
The only thing I would ask, if there's an objection made, just pause before you answer the question. Let me roll in the objection first. And you're welcome to manipulate the microphone to help you project your voice out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, with that said, Mr. Skinner, you may inquire. You're ready.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
They can't see the screen, I'm assuming? Go 6 days, not messing that up, and then the wife's 2 hours.
I'll start with her later. Good afternoon, ma'am. We'll get to that screen in just a second. Just to lay a little background about you, will you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
Sure. My name is Susan Johnson, and I work for T-Mobile.
All right. And how long have you worked for T-Mobile?
26 years.
And can you just, I know we all understand, but for our record, what is T-Mobile?
A cellular telephone company.
All right. And what are your duties as an employee for T-Mobile?
So I'm a manager within the Law Enforcement Relations Group. We respond to subpoenas and other legal demands from various agencies across the United States, testify in court as the custodian of records, and then I supervise the trial team.
So, ma'am, do you travel around the country testifying about data recovered from T-Mobile records?
Yes, sir.
You do that on a regular basis?
Yes, sir.
Do your responsibilities include collecting data that belongs under the umbrella of T-Mobile?
Yes.
Now, do you also interpret the data that you receive, that you look at under T-Mobile? Do you interpret that for purposes of testimony in court?
Yes.
Is this done in the normal and ordinary course of your business?
Yes, it is.
Is this data that you review on a regular basis compiled into documents such as the one that we're about to talk about in this particular case?
Yes.
Right. Now, ma'am, as you testify here today, generally speaking, how long does T-Mobile keep the data?
Generally 2 years.
Right. Did you receive and/or your company, T-Mobile, receive a subpoena that was dated January 8th, 2019?
Yes.
Have you had access to this data and had a chance to review it prior to coming to court today?
Yes.
Are you defined as a custodian of records for T-Mobile?
Yes.
Ma'am, I'll now show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 36. It should be on a screen in front of you and the jury. So you can see no objections. I believe it's up on everybody's screen at this time. What are we looking at, ma'am, in State's 36?
This is the call detail records.
All right. And can you just give us an idea of how these records are either kept and stored first under the T-Mobile umbrella?
They're kept electronically.
Are they made and or compiled at or approximately the same time, in other words, in real time that these calls are being made?
Yes.
Are they stored from that point forward, if it was happening today, moving forward for 2 years?
Correct.
Was that storage requirement of 2 years by T-Mobile in effect in December of 2018?
Yes.
All right. Did your company receive a subpoena issued, as we see in States 36 at the top, by a requester, Detective Samantha Dishman of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
The data that was compiled, is it for the telephone number of 904-568-1617?
Yes.
Is there subscriber information attributed to that number under T-Mobile, and if so, who, please?
Yes. I don't recall the name. I'd have to see the document.
All right. Now, man, we can connect that dot later on the telephone. My next question for you is this. When these records are compiled into the way we see them now, can you tell us how it goes from y'all's computer system into the way we see it today, if you know?
Sure. So when the request is compiled, we email the information just as you see it to the requesting agency.
All right. And the document that we're looking at, is this all call records under the telephone number 904-568-1617? Do these records start on December 3rd of 2018, which appears to be reflected in row number 13?
Yes.
And do these records end that you provided to law enforcement, what appears to be row 2301, on January 2nd of 2019?
Yes.
Do these records encompass all phone calls and or IM chatting, messaging for 904-568-1617 during those dates and times?
Yes, they are called phone calls as well as text messages.
And, ma'am, I want to now ask you with respect to, let's just stay in row, for example, we'll start with row 14. Is the date reflected in row 14? I see it's a bit askew, but would that be this particular either phone call or message occurred on 12/3 of 2018?
Correct.
Now, under time, is that military time, ma'am?
Yes.
All right. At the top, sort of first sentence or two, under sort of looks like row 10, it says, quote, all times below are reflected in coordinated universal time, parentheses, UTC. Will you explain that for our jury?
So depending on what time of the year it is, being that these records are from December, you would have to subtract 5 hours from the time that you see reflected in order to arrive at East Coast time.
So for example purposes, if the UTC time reflected on these records was 12 noon, would the accurate time be 12 minus the 5 hours, making it actually 7 a.m.?
Correct.
Is the time reflected on these, for example, in row 14, where it says this call was made December 3, 2018 at 00:17:51 and or 12:17 a.m. Has that time already been calculated by the UTC, or do you have to do it from that time and go back 5 hours?
You have to do it from that time and go back 5 hours.
All right. And then moving across under the fourth column, under call type. For example, what is RCS-IMCHAT?
So those are like read receipts or delivered receipts with regards to a text message.
All right, and dropping down in that same column, let's say on row 16, what does MTC mean?
MTC stands for mobile terminating call, which is an incoming phone call.
All right. In the next column, it says direction, and the word incoming, does that indicate that this telephone device was receiving an incoming phone call?
Incoming or outgoing phone call or text message.
All right. So under the direction column, if I scroll down a little further, it'll either say incoming and outgoing as it reflects that particular phone call or text.
Correct.
All right.
However, the SMSCs that are listed, which is a text message, does not have the word incoming or outgoing. The way to determine if it was incoming or outgoing is by looking in column F, which is calling number. So if the subscriber's phone number is listed there, that means that they generated an outgoing text.
All right. So can you see my cursor, ma'am? Is that circling the SMSC you just described?
Correct.
And it's column F now, what I'm circling as the calling number. Is that what you were referring to?
Correct.
And I'm going to scroll up where my cursor is going. Is that column F?
Correct.
All right, what's column G? What's the dialed number?
So dialed number, called number, and destination number work hand in hand. So for example, I can have programmed in my phone 555-1212. However, the network is going to translate that and put a 1 in the area code in front of it.
All right, so for example, just so we're clear, could you start, let's say, with row 18 and explain what that row means? It looks like it was December 3rd of 2018. Let's stay with row 18. Time 14:39 and 17 seconds. What does that translate into, for example, with UTC time?
So that would be 9:39, 17 a.m. East Coast time.
All right, and then under duration, in that column, there's the number 10. Is that in seconds or minutes?
That's in seconds.
You. And it's in seconds throughout that row, column, which is column letter C.
Correct.
You. And then moving across row 18, we see, for example, calling number is 908-612-6545.
Correct.
What is that, ma'am?
So that's the phone number that's calling into the records of this individual's.
Right. So does that mean in column G, where it says 904-568-1617, that is the number being called, which is this particular device records we're looking at?
Correct.
And then row H would match that. It's the same telephone number, correct?
Correct.
And row I, column I would match that because it's also the same telephone number, correct?
Correct.
That's the destination number.
Yes, sir.
And then what's the IMSI column, column J? What is that?
So IMSI stands for International Mobile Subscriber Identity Number, which is the serial number that's associated with the SIM card found in the back of the phone.
All right, and how about column K, IMEI? What is that?
IMEI stands for International Mobile Equipment Identifier, which is the serial number that's attached to the actual phone itself.
All right, and the last column I want to ask you about is column L. Like, for example, in row 18, it says completed successfully. What does that indicate?
So that indicates that the call went through the network successfully.
Ma'am, have you had a chance to go through these records for this month, dated December 3rd, 2018 to January 2nd of 2019, and review these records?
Yes.
Did you determine if there were calls either made to or made from the following phone number, area code 347-652-3294?
Yes.
And could you give us an idea of the exact number for that month of calls to and or from this device to 347-652-3294?
So it was actually phone calls and text messages together 228 times.
Thank you. And were those made throughout this particular month?
Yes.
So the defendant's phone, let me strike that. So this particular device, I know you don't know without seeing the name, this particular phone number is going to that phone number that I just read, either text or phone call throughout that month 228 times?
Correct.
Now, I want to direct your attention to basically 4 specific calls, and direct your attention, and or calls or texts, and direct your attention to December 20 of 2018. And I would like to direct your attention to row 1368. Do I have that highlighted correctly, ma'am, on stage 36?
Yes.
First and foremost, are we talking about the date of 12/20/2018?
Yes.
In column B, the military time with accompanying UTC time of 13:20, what was the actual time of this either incoming or outgoing call?
8:20:49 a.m. East Coast time.
Thank you. And was this an incoming or outgoing call?
This was outgoing.
And was this call made to or from the number we see in column F?
It was made from the phone number ending in 1617.
All right. Does that mean a telephone number that ends in 1617 called the number in column G?
Yes.
As well as the one in column H?
Correct.
And the one reflected in column I.
Correct.
And lastly, was the duration of this phone call on the morning of December 20th, 71 seconds, reflected in column C?
Yes.
Ma'am? Now directing your attention to the next. I think there's 4 on that day, but I just want to take them one by one. I want to direct your attention to row 1382. You see that, ma'am?
Yes.
Do I have it highlighted appropriately?
Yes.
Now, was this phone call made either to or from? We'll get to that on December 20, 2018.
Yes.
And again, referencing UTC time and military time in column B, what time was this call actually made East Coast time?
11:18:20 a.m.
Was this phone call 4,892 seconds?
Yes.
And what does MTC mean again, ma'am?
Incoming phone call.
All right, and that's what we see in column E.
Correct.
In this particular phone call, in column F, does 347-652-3294 call the subscriber in these records to the number 904-568-1617?
Yes.
Thank you. Now I want to move to 1401. This is the third phone call I'd like to point your attention to and explain to us. Do you see what I'm highlighting in row 1401?
Yes.
Was this phone call made on 12/20/2018?
Yes.
And when you do the math for us in column B with respect to what time it would have been made Eastern Standard Time?
That would be 3:28:07 p.m. East Coast time.
Was this a 5-second phone call?
Yes.
Was it an incoming phone call to this device?
Yes.
Was the call that is calling this particular device made from 347-652-3294?
Yes.
And the number that is calling to is the number affiliated with this particular device?
Correct.
And then lastly, ma'am, I want to direct your attention to 1404. Do I have the appropriate row highlighted?
Yes.
Was this call made on December 20, 2018?
Yes.
You do the math for us in column B as to what time this outgoing phone call was made on that evening.
That would be 3:47:09 p.m. East Coast time.
Thank you. And was the duration of this call 2,017 seconds?
Yes.
Now, what does MOC mean in column D?
Mobile originating call, which is an outgoing phone call.
All right. Is that what we see in column E?
Yes.
And again, was it made from this device?
Yes.
And was it called to 347-652-3294, which is what we see in column G?
Correct.
Now, ma'am, the last thing I want to ask you about is, can you kind of give us a general explanation or summary about connectivity of this device? For example, if somebody was either in airplane mode or they were using some kind of third-party app, could you tell us or explain to us whether that would be reflected in these records, and if so, explain?
It would not be reflected in the records. It's a third-party app, which would be a data session, which is not reflected in these calls.
All right. Nowhere in these calls?
No.
One moment, Your Honor. Nothing further. Thank you, sir. Steve.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
I just have a couple of follow-up. I'm not going to take long at all. I wanted to point your direction to a couple of other dates, if possible, with those same numbers that you've been identifying throughout this entire, throughout the entire direct examination. If we go down a little further to 1738. Give me 1 minute to get there. Do you see those same two phone numbers interacting on December 23rd, 2018?
Yes.
And similarly, that duration of that phone call was 495 seconds.
Correct.
That was an incoming phone call from that phone number from the phone number 347-652-3294.
Correct.
And it was to the phone number of 904-568-1617.
Correct.
Thank you. And you'd previously testified that those two phone numbers interacted quite a bit,
Correct.
either by text or by phone.
Correct.
And that was throughout that entire month,
Yes.
not just on those couple of days that we've isolated, but throughout that entire month, before and after.
Correct.
Did you isolate how many phone calls versus texts were given in that 228 number that you provided to us?
No.
Okay. And obviously you can only tell us, as it relates to these phone numbers, that that one number called that other number, correct?
Correct.
Or vice versa.
Correct.
As far as who was actually on that phone call or who was sending text, if it was text, you would not be able to tell us that.
Correct.
You wouldn't be able to tell us who's on the other end receiving that phone call or receiving that text message either, correct?
Correct.
You can simply provide us with this information, which is just raw data of the time, the date, the length of the call, whether it was incoming or outgoing, whether it was a phone call or a text message, and the numbers that were connected.
Correct.
Nothing further.
No, you're correct, sir.
Ma'am, good to see you. Appreciate your testimony, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
State, do I need to take a break now?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Short? Can I just give them a short break rather than an afternoon break?
At the court's pleasure.
That makes it difficult. Okay. Members of the jury, I do something with the attorneys outside your presence. It's not going to take long, so I don't want to give you a full break right now. Again, we just got back from lunch, and I want to get a lot done this afternoon. Let's take a break, go inside the jury room. Give me maybe 5 to 10 minutes. I'll take care of it, then we'll start back up. I will, of course, give you a break at some point this afternoon, and we'll go from there. Please remember, don't discuss the case among yourselves or each other, and we'll see you soon. All right, the jury's outside our presence. You guys may have a seat. So, since it became an issue earlier, given the state's request, I'm assuming, State, who you call? Are you calling SS or ID next?
SS, Your Honor.
Well, I did look up the statute, 916.18. So sub 2, and I'm just going to read it just that way it's in the transcript. 916 point, Florida Statute 918.16 in subsection 2 states that the victim of a sex offense is testifying concerning that offense in any civil or criminal trial. The court shall clear the courtroom of all persons upon the request of the victim, regardless of the victim's age or mental capacity, except that the parties to the cause and their immediate families or guardians, attorneys and their secretaries, officers of the court, jurors, newspaper reporters or broadcasters, court reporters, and at the request of the victim, a victim or witness advocate designated by the state attorney may remain in the courtroom. So I'm assuming SS is requesting invocation of that statute.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
And ID is as well.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
But and I think the state sent an email out earlier confirming that the state has confirmed with the media representatives that they're not going to show SS or ID live on camera. during their testimony?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So, in defense, do you have anything you want to add on this issue?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so what I would ask then at this point, you don't meet the criteria of the exception under subsection 2, meaning that if you're not parties of this case, which is just the state of Florida versus Johnathan Quiles, or Quiles, attorneys and their secretaries, officers of the court, jurors, newspaper reporters or broadcasters, court reporters, and any victim advocate that's present from the state attorney's office, everyone else must remain outside the courtroom for the pendency of SS's testimony. When ID's testimony begins, SS's family is going to have to vacate the courtroom, and then ID's family can come in. That would be the one switch that would be made. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Defense, anything you want to add?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so other than that, we're ready to bring in SS
Yes, sir, Your
when
Honor.
the jury's back in.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Okay.
Can I
Yes.
take a bathroom break, Your Honor, please?
Yes, ma'am, that's fine. All right, I'll take a quick 2-minute break for the staff. Can I see a counsel from each side at sidebar real quick regarding scheduling?